These are the objections I get all the time as a loan officer from buyers who have been sitting on the fence and trying to decide, why should I buy right now? Should I buy right now? Is it a good time? Is it a bad time? What's coming in the horizon? Let's talk about some of the common issues and see if it makes it worth it for you to buy. The number one reason I have for buyers who decided not to buy last year or into this year is interest rates. I hear it so many times. If I had probably even a penny for every buyer who's told me they want to wait to see what's going to happen with interest rates, they want to know what's going to happen with interest rates, they think interest rates are going to come down, I wouldn't have my student loan debt anymore. And I would love that. But unfortunately, that's really not what we're up against anymore. So I like to educate my buyers and remind everyone, we can't use emotion when we decide to make large purchases like this. We have to use data. Same thing if you were going to go out and buy a car, right? Yes, you want a certain car. Yes, you want it to have certain seats to it or a certain color. But at the end of the day, when we make that large of a purchase, we're looking at miles per gallon. We're looking at price on it. We're looking at the interest rate we can get. We're looking at the safety ratings. We're looking at reviews, right? We're not just going to walk into a car lot and be like, oh my God, I love it. I want to take it right now, right? So same thing for houses. It is a very emotional experience purchasing a house, and you can be tempted to lead with that, but we really got to look at the data. So when it comes to interest rates, if we look all the way back to the 70s, right? We're going to stop at the 70s because before that, people were buying houses with 4 blueberries. You really can't look at data from that far back. But if we look at the 70s and we track from decade to decade to decade, what was the average interest rate? 7.1%. Now you have your little blip in there of 2020, right? During COVID, where rates just bottomed out and, well, no inflation. Oopsies, we're seeing the results of that now. However, if you look all the way back to the 70s, average interest rates are 7.1%. Now, sometimes they were way above that. They went all the way up till 12% for a while, and they went down to 5s in between. But again, on average, 7.1%. Rates have been 6.5 to 6.6-ish for most of this year. So if I were to tell you, if you were going to buy a car, for example, and I were to tell you, hey, the average interest rates on cars have been 7.1%, but you can get one now for around 6.5%, and this is an item that you want and that you need. Would you sit around and take the bus or walk or take a scooter? Or would you go, hey, I'm going to make this large purchase, more than likely either way. This is important to me. I think I need to go ahead and do this, especially if interest rates are lower. You probably would go ahead and move forward, right, on average. So when we're looking at houses, it's the same thing of, can we sit around and wait for rates to come down? Sure. Does that mean because we sat around, rates are going to come down? Statistically, no. Statistically, they're going to stay about where they are. And if you watch the last Fed meeting that we had last week, they really are likely to stay where they are right now. We as a government, we as a society, we as the powers that be have no good plans to fix inflation, housing prices, interest rates for the rest of the year, to be really frank. So if you were on the fence, just simply waiting for interest rates to come down, you better enjoy that fence. You better enjoy where you're renting, living in your parents' house, living with family members, living in your townhouse with your 12 neighbors around you, living with a landlord who won't come fix your sink. That's your fence, right? You got to love staying on it because you're waiting on something that statistically may not ever occur. The second one I get a lot from buyers on the fence is, I'm going to wait for home prices to come down. And yes, if you're thinking of the fact that homes from a lot of areas, like Charleston's a good example, where we have longer days on market, you would think, well, the sellers are keeping their home on the market longer. They're certainly going to just start dropping these prices. Again, that's an emotional piece you're looking at. You're not looking at the data then. When we look at the data for the last 70 years, we have only had 4 years that home prices were technically in the negative, meaning that more on average sold below list price or below equity value than at or above. 4 times 70. 470. So again, statistically, what's likely? Statistically, it is likely that homes will not show a significant decline in price. Now, that does not mean you will not find homes that are selling for lower than what they were listed for, or you can't negotiate lower. That does not mean that doesn't exist. It means on average, homes will continue to increase in value and will continue to increase in the amount that they're sold for. especially when you look at the data of, again, you can't assume because a home sat on the market for a while, the buyer is automatically going to get a lower price on it and the seller's going to drop. What's actually happening is we have the highest percentage of sellers taking their homes back off the market right now than what we've had for the last decade. So sellers are going, hey, I've got a 2-3% interest rate. I've got a good mortgage payment here. Yes, I would love to have a different home, a larger home, whatever, but I'm not willing to take a cut in my equity. I'm not willing to give up my equity that I've paid into and built. I'm going to take it back off the market. We'll try it again next year. So it's not always that simple. But again, if you look at data, we shouldn't be seeing large amounts of homes with pricing decreases. So it's really about, can you find the neighborhood that you want, the size home that you want, the school district that you want? Is that available for you now? And is that meaningful to you? Or do you want to take the risk of waiting and again, continue to rent, continue to live at your parents' house, continue whatever your current living situation is on something that you can't show data that it's likely to happen? The third one, depending on the area that we hear a lot of, is I'm going to wait for more inventory. Now in Charleston, we've got a good amount of inventory. However, the bulk of it is new construction. So even though we've got a lot of inventory, it may not be what people want. Not everybody wants new construction, and I certainly understand why. However, we do get people who go like, well, I'm just going to keep waiting until more inventory comes up. Again, the risk becomes there. We have news article after news article after news article about how tough it is right now, economy-wise, housing-wise. So again, we have the highest percentage of sellers taking their homes back off the market than we've had in 10 years. And potential sellers are aware of this as well. They're seeing the longer days on market. They're seeing the fact that the neighbor had to take their house back off the market. They're seeing the fact that their friend put their house on the market and got really bad offers on it and decided to wait. So we may not have this rush of inventory either. Sellers are way more apprehensive right now about putting their house on the market. It's not as much of a leisure move anymore. It's a necessary move for a lot of sellers. Just like buyers. A lot of buyers now, it's a necessary buy, not as much of a want or leisure buy. So waiting for inventory, number one, it may not happen. And number two, you don't know what the pricing is going to be once they come back on the market. You may miss out on a neighborhood that you like because as more inventory comes up and you've been sitting there waiting on that, so has everyone else around you trying to buy. So now you could be up against multiple offers, which everyone goes like, oh, we're in a buyer's market. We are. That doesn't mean we're not seeing people out here still in multiple offer situations, still having to go with no seller credits because they're up against 4 other offers. So inventory doesn't always make life better. It's always going to be about if you're on the fence. Does it make sense for you? Can you afford it? Are you happy where you are right now? Right? That's the emotional pieces that you got to look at. If the data pieces are holding you back, the rate, the inventory, the house prices, I would say that piece, we know the data now to show we're actually at a good spot. So we're at a good spot data-wise. Then you have to decide, is it worth it for me to buy right now? Can I afford to buy right now? Am I happy where I am currently? I hope that helps give you some data. If you have any questions or want to talk about your specific scenario, just reach out.